you through the Journal Selection Assistance Service training module. What is the purpose of this training module? The purpose is to learn the method of preparing a good quality JSA service report and also to identify the best possible ways to ensure that the manuscript will have the highest chance of acceptance in the suggested journals. Let's look into the steps that you need to consider before choosing a list of journals. Once you receive the manuscript, you need to read the title and abstract of the manuscript and understand the manuscript's core research area. Once this is done, identify the keywords that you think would best describe the research focus of the paper. Next, look up these keywords on search portals like Google and identify articles that appear to be almost similar to that of the author. Identify from the title of each of the articles displayed before you for results that match with that of the author's research area. Once this is done, read the abstract and conclusion of these similar articles to get an idea of how similar as well as unique is the author's research in comparison to the already reported studies. Provide comments and suggestions on the significance and novelty of the author's study. Your understanding of the research content in the manuscript through the above steps will help you to provide a detailed analysis of all the subsections under the specific comments of the journal expert in the JSA report provided to you. Now, let's move on to the steps that you need to consider before choosing a peer-reviewed journal. Like I said earlier, you need to read the title and abstract of the manuscript to have a brief idea about the research reported in the manuscript. Go through the journals that are mentioned in the reference list. This will help you identify specific types of journals which report studies similar to that of the author. Use the title of the manuscript to find similar articles and identify the journals in which they are published. Your final list of 5 journals might include few journals from your search here. You can also use the online journal finder service mentioned in the below links given by Elsevier and Springer. Once this is done, take a note of the client requirements. These parameters will help you place filters during the selection of journals from a wide list obtained through your search. Once you have completely understood the content of the manuscript, make a list of 10 most relevant journals which you feel will be appropriate for the manuscript. However, the manuscript might not have its best chance of acceptance in all of them. Hence, we need to identify the 5 best journals from this list. How do we do that? How do we select the 5 best suitable journals? First, you need to read the aim and scope of each journal to understand the main areas of research that the journal looks for in a manuscript. You should be able to identify the key topics that the journal is interested in publishing. Identify if the study has broad implications that may be of interest to researchers in other fields. In such a case, choose a journal that covers a wide range of topics. On the other hand, if the researchers in this particular field are likely to be interested in this study, then a specialized journal would be more appropriate to reach the target audience directly. Open the list of articles in the recently published issues of the journal to have an idea of the type of research that the journal is currently interested in. If you are able to identify 2 similar articles published within the last 2 years, you can support your choice of journal, stating that the journal is currently considering manuscripts that involve the particular type of study as performed by the authors. You can also determine whether the manuscript is suitable for the journal in its current form or requires some modifications like sample size should be increased, objectives should be highlighted, methods should be clearly stated, or should connect with the experiments performed, or whether the author needs to use new advanced experimental techniques. Moving on to the client requirements. I've listed out the most prominent client requirements that we receive during our JSA service. Let me take you through these client requirements individually. First, SCI or SSCI index journals. You can download the list of SCI and SSCI index journals from the links that is provided in the slide. The above lists will help you confirm if the journal is indexed in these databases. These lists will help you gather two other points that is provided in the JSA report. One is the publisher name and country, and also the ISSN number. Similarly, PubMed and Scopus index journals can be downloaded from these links that is provided to you by following the steps mentioned in the slide. Indexing can also be obtained from the journal's web page as well. Open Access Journal. This is a very common client requirement. Authors go for open access journals because it supports a wide readership, and also this can lead to increased citations of the manuscript. I have listed few links from various publishers like Sage, Palgrave, Nature, where you could download the list of open access journals. Moving on to the open access fees, there are several online authentic databases that provide the open access fee for various journals. Some of them are listed below, given by famous publishers like Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, Nature and Cambridge. You could download the open access free from the links that is provided in the slide. What do authors mean by fast publication or fast decision time? The best way to identify whether a journal has a fast publication process is to look into the number of issues published in a year. The journals that publish 6 or more issues per year can be considered to have a fast publication process. In case where the chosen journal is highly suitable for author's manuscript, but the number of issues published per year does not fall within this category, then you can search for the number of days taken from the initial submission to the first decision or till acceptance and publication, which is also called the peer review time. This beautiful box that is represented here will give you the peer review time that is mentioned under the category speed. And you can come across this box in all Springer journals in their homepage. Coming to highly specialized journals for specific audience. Journals which specify that they are devoted to a particular group of readers, clinicians, engineers in their aim and scope indicate that they give importance to the interest of a particular category of audience while analyzing a manuscript, or they mention about the wide coverage of research topics that will attract researchers from the different fields of the study. Moving on to the next requirement, best suited journals. Like I said earlier, the research carried out by the author should fall within the core aim and scope of the journal. If this is so, then you can confirm that particular journal is a best suited journal for the author's manuscript. Highest ranking journals. Journals are basically ranked based on various parameters. So let's look into the Shimago journal ranking system. Here, journals are ranked as Q1, Q2, Q3 and Q4. Q1 and Q2 representing the best quality journals and Q4 depicting the lowest ranking for a journal. In rare cases, the author, especially in the field of economics and business, may request for journals that may have their ranking as A1 or A2. The Quillis system of ranking international journals, which are specific to economic research, is quite an old parameter that is not used nowadays. But in certain cases, the authors might want us to rank the journal based on this criteria. To address this client requirement, you can follow the respective impact factor of the journals as distributed against each Qualys ranking as given below in the slide. Moving on to the next client requirement, impact factor of 1 to 2, 1.5 to 3 or higher than 3. The impact factor of a journal is not the only parameter that determines the reputation of a journal. Sometimes, the most highly regarded journals in a field are not the ones with the highest impact factor. The impact factor of most of the journals are displayed on their web page. However, in certain instances, if you are unable to find the impact factor on the journal web page or any of its linked pages, then you can look for it in the Shimago web page by following the steps that is displayed here. Moving on to the last client requirement, journals that do not require the patient consent form to be submitted along with the manuscript. This is applicable for journals that report clinical studies. Few journals mention in their ITA section under the compliance with ethical standards that the corresponding author should be prepared to collect documentation of compliance with ethical standards and send it, if requested, during the peer review or after publication. The author usually does not need to provide the patient consent form during manuscript submission in such cases. Now that you have completed the first 3 steps toward deciding on the 5 best suitable journals, the final list of parameters that you come across at the end of a JSA report are to be considered to finalize your list. Moving on to the first parameter, motivation for the work and significance of the result. In order to comment on this section, you need to look into 2 parameters. 1. The hypothesis or question to be investigated should be clearly stated in the manuscript. The author should present the goal or purpose of his or her study very clearly in the abstract and at the end of the introduction. Finally, the conclusion should support the results and highlight future implications. Also, the author needs to analyze if the aim and objectives of the study, along with the findings reported, comply with the level of research reported in the recently published articles of the journal, and if they will hold enough importance before the journal audience. The manuscript should highlight on what makes the study special and how it can benefit the readers. Does the manuscript state the findings appropriately? In this section, you need to go through similar articles and identify the sample size or volume of data reported. Now, analyze if the study performed by the authors has an adequate amount of data or sample size, or whether the author needs to increase the sample size or perform more trials of experiment to prove the statistical significance of his or her findings. The manuscript sometimes may also need additional data to support the findings. In case of medical, clinical or life science papers, the author may need to add advanced or more appropriate experiments. In case of papers in the field of arts and humanities, additional literature from recent publications might add value to the objectives set in the paper. Next section, is the manuscript ready for publication in its current state? To comment on this section, you need to ensure that the title of the article is clear, accurate and descriptive. You also need to identify if the text has grammatical errors and whether the text flows in a logical manner, and also identify if there are gaps in study design. The study design should be clearly stated. There might be a need to revisit the experiments, taking into consideration as to whether they are the most reliable source of analysis today, based on which the objectives of the study stand alone. Are the findings appropriately stated and backed by substantial evidence? All of the findings of the author's investigation should be referenced. This will indicate that the author's work is beyond the recent developments achieved by other researchers in this field and will hold strong significance in the research world. Conclusions should be backed by substantial evidence, and all the shortcomings of the study should be discussed clearly in the author's conclusion. Moving on to the last section, novelty of research to the field of study. The manuscript should clearly demonstrate its originality in research. It should be of high quality and explain how relevant his findings are, keeping in mind the interest of readers and future applications. For the manuscript to be of high quality, the methods should be easily reproducible and well documented with no logical gaps, and it should have strong statistical evidence. I hope this training module would help you to provide your valuable suggestions and comments that would help our authors in picking the right journal for their manuscript. Thank you.